David Dulio joins us. He's a professor of political science, Oakland University, and the director of Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement. David, thank you very much for joining us here on the MegaCast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you had a little bit of opportunity to hear the previous conversation. You got two groups of people in the state of Michigan that are having difficulty getting their unemployment checks. Just people who filed, and there were what, a million filers. So we're understanding that that's going to be difficult. It doesn't mitigate the pain for those people that have not received their unemployment checks. And then, making matters even worse, Kurt Lawson of the West Bloomfield Police Department confirmed in West Bloomfield alone right now, their detectives are working on 20 unemployment fraud cases. That's one small community across the whole state of Michigan. As a result, the state of Michigan's action is to suspend unemployment compensation to 350,000 people around the state as they fight fraud. It's certainly a direct approach to do it. We could debate whether it's the right approach to do it, but David, that's one of the many issues that we're facing right now, and it's got to be a fascinating time to be following state government.
Well, it certainly is, and you bring up a couple of the most brutal instances or most brutal examples of the problems that the state government is facing, right? And it's almost like it's a never-ending list of things that are being impacted and influenced by COVID-19. I mean, the unemployment issues that you raised, the initial difficulty of folks getting access to the benefits that they have coming to them, and the if there's a million filers and 340,000 potentially fraudulent cases, that's a third, right? A third of cases potentially fraudulent. That's just a brutal hit for hundreds of thousands of people in our state. And I read this morning too that coronavirus is having a big impact on the small amount of funds that we were really going to have to put toward the roads in our state, right? I mean, with people stuck at home and not being able to drive, they're not going to the gas pump, they're not paying gas tax, which would fund those road repairs. Certainly not to the extent that we need it here, if people haven't forgotten how bad our roads are. But it's another example of how widespread the effects of COVID-19 are here in Michigan.
Well, it's having a huge impact on all of us, and let's just talk political here for a minute, because that's your beat and and mine to some degree, and I don't like to get into right and left political. We don't do that here on the show, but it's fun and interesting and helpful to talk about what is going on in the political sphere. Is there a battle right now in the state of Michigan, a political battle for the hearts and minds of Michiganders? And is that part of every issue where the Republicans are hoping they're going to come out the big winner, the Democrats are hoping they're going to come out the big winner? And is that part of what is going into every decision that is being made in Lansing and around the state?
Well, I don't know if it's part of every decision that's being made, either say in the governor's office or in the legislature, because I'm not inside the heads of those individuals. But I would say that as an observer and analyst, everything's political, right? I mean, there's and I think there are a couple of factors that are ratcheting that up for us here in Michigan. One is the and you know this very well, the increased polarization, almost historic levels of polarization that we're seeing, where both sides, right and left, are in their corners and they're not coming out. They're dug in, and everything that comes up, whether it's unemployment benefits, road funding, that was certainly the case before, but the nursing home policy that's in effect gets layered over with polarized politics, right? And another factor that ramps it up even more is the fact that we're in an election year, right? 2020 is a big year, and there's more at stake now, say, than in 2019, or there will be in 2021, just because of the fact that we're going to go to the polls in November, and everybody knows that Michigan is a really crucial state for the outcome of the presidential election.
Yeah, and that's even ramping it up more. You've got the legislature, the Republican-controlled legislature, been battling with the governor all the way through the coronavirus case, and then
that's a really good point, right? I mean, that's divided government, right? We're in that situation where you've got one branch of our elected offices controlled by the Democratic Party, and one branch, the legislature, both houses, controlled by the Republicans. So that just makes you throw that into the mix, and it makes it even more polarized. Some might even say more toxic.
Yeah, and then certainly complicated by the fact that the president really is concerned about Michigan. It was a key state in his victory last time, and if he expects to win again, it's going to be a big state. He's been really critical of the governor. Our governor is on the short list of vice presidential candidates, possibly. So, he's been saying that woman in Michigan, and she's been poking back at him at every opportunity. So, we try to set all that aside, and none of these people's jobs are easy, but it is fascinating to watch all this. And I just hope that it's not getting in the way. You know what is interesting? As we look at hyper local politics, it seems it's about the last place that we're not seeing as much highly partisan activity. If you go to your local city council meeting, you might even have difficulty identifying which of your local elected officials, if you didn't already know, were Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Some of those offices are nonpartisan, so they don't have those. Some of those office holders don't have those labels behind their name, like some of the elected officials that we might be more familiar with. And I'd also say too that there's a saying about local government that there's no Democratic or Republican way to pick up the trash or plow the streets, right? So a lot of times that is where some more pragmatic thinking happens, where it's about solving the problem at hand rather than getting dragged into the maybe the national swirl of politics, if you will. But at the same time, right, we can certainly find examples of where local politics has gotten to the point where it makes us want to look away.
Typically, a crisis is really good for an incumbent. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it, and if you're uncomfortable answering it, I totally get it. Is this crisis helping or hurting the governor?
That's a good question. I think it remains to be seen, right? I think that we don't know where the end of this is, right? We might be at the end of the beginning, right, rather than the beginning of the end. And I'm no epidemiologist or doctor, so I can't tell you that. But from a political standpoint, the governor's not up for re-election for another couple of years. And so she's got a lot of time before she has to worry about facing the voters. Now that might change if she's on the ticket with former Vice President Biden. But I think that even if we think about the political process, say from now until Election Day in November, that's about 5 months, which is, as you know, also is an eternity, right? It's a lifetime in politics.
All right, I'll tell you one person. I'm going to answer my own question I was going to ask you next, and then I'll ask for your feedback. David Coulter, Oakland County executive, coming in the heels of legendary Albrecht Patterson, who was here forever. Albrecht Patterson, Republican, David Coulter, former mayor from Ferndale, Democrat. I would say this crisis has been extraordinarily good for David Coulter.
Well, you make a really good point, and I think that's on the money, not just for Dave Coulter, but for all incumbents who are on the ballot in 2020. Certainly here in Michigan, right? I think if you think about, say, Dave Coulter, he's got to get through the primary on August 1st, but and even folks like Haley Stevens and Alyssa Slotkin, two members of the U.S. House of Representatives, members of the State House of Representatives, right? These folks are going to be campaigning after the August primary against folks who are challengers, right? Which is a disadvantage to begin with. but those challengers are going to face additional hurdles, right? They will have maybe more trouble. I would say without a doubt more trouble campaigning as they might like to, especially in down ballot races like State House, where door-to-door campaigning is really important and is a hallmark of those kinds of campaigns. Challenger candidates are going to have a harder time raising money to compete with those already well-funded incumbents, right? So I think that all incumbents who are seeking re-election this year have a distinct advantage, even more so than they do in normal cycles.
All right, and then the third group of people that we really should be talking about right now is the people of the state of Michigan. And I'll tell you what, their voice has been heard on multiple issues louder and more effectively than I can remember in my lifetime, going all the way back to the 60s when I was a little kid. The protests that we saw, even on COVID-19, before the whole Black Lives Matters group of protests that are going on right now. The people in the state of Michigan and across our country, but right here at home, have never spoken more clearly and as loud as they are right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and you make a good case that it's on issues across the spectrum, right, and across the policy space, and that's a good thing, right? I think that's the fact that more and more people are seeing that, hey, maybe if I speak up, I can bring about some change that I'd like to see. That's a positive, right? And of course, we want those demonstrations and protests to happen in the right way and to do it in a way that's respectful and civil and productive, right? Rather than getting into destruction of property, et cetera, et cetera.
David Dulio is our guest, professor of political science, Oakland University, and director of the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement. This has been fun talking to you. I appreciate you taking time to chat with you. When people ask me to speak in public, and the rare times that happens, I always like to talk about the evolution and the change in media because it has been so dramatic in my career and lifetime. And, CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, we didn't have animals like that even 5 or 10 years ago to the degree that we do now. And it's fascinating, a fascinating time that we're living in. And I'm sure you're going to have plenty of fodder for your students when they return this fall.
No doubt about it. There's always stuff to talk about.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything else you want to add before we say so long?
No, if you're happy, I'm happy.
All right. Very good. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. David Dulio joining us from Oakland University.